really, I'm dropping 6 pound fluoro down 8 feet.
Okay.
And
6 pound is like 4X maybe. What is that?
3, 4. Yeah, you don't mess with anything like 4X is about as light as you want to get on the yacht.
Because of the size of the fish, or
Size of the fish and the current. If you hook a good fish, you're not
uh,
going to get
you're not gonna get
it.
them on
And
5X.
another thing, I just had a conversation with the guy is if you want to bring your own flies, they have to
Mhm.
have heavy wire hooks.
Oh, is that right?
These fish will bend out any kind of light wire, anything you got going on.
Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haig. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey anglers, welcome back to another episode of the Destination Angler, brought to you by Trout Routes, the #1 fishing app, helping trout anglers avoid the crowds and explore new public water. Download it for free in the App Store today. By Adams Built Fishing Gear, the trusted source for quality fly fishing gear built to last at an affordable price. And by Angler's Coffee, fueling your next cast with amazing coffee delivered to your doorstep one batch at a time. Get started today and save 20%. And by Got Fishing, crafting world-class fly fishing adventures specially designed to your level of experience and budget. Up next on the Destination Angler, get ready for an adrenaline-fueled journey of a lifetime to Mongolia as we chase after the legendary taimen, the largest trout species in the world. After that, we venture to Gray Reef on the renowned North Platte River for some Wyoming-style brown trout fly fishing. And be sure to backcast to catch the last episode on the thoroughfare region of Yellowstone National Park with Paul Weimer, coordinator of the Yellowstone Fly Fishing Volunteer Program. We ride along with Paul on a 140-mile journey on horseback to the most remote spot in the lower 48 in search of native cutthroat trout. You won't want to miss these shows. Hey, and if you like the show, please tell a buddy. Today, our destination is the revered Youghiogheny River in southwestern Pennsylvania, and our guest is expert fly angler Rob Walters, head guide for Laurel Highlands Guide Service. Once polluted from abandoned mines, the Yawk, as it's called, has undergone a remarkable transformation into a world-class tailwater with a reputation for big trout and tremendous hatches. Rob grew up in Delaware, fly fishing on local trout streams and stripers in the surf. In 2005, he moved to Pittsburgh and traded in the salt life for the mountain life of western Pennsylvania and has been guiding and fly fishing the Yawk ever since. Today, Rob shares his preference for the quality trout waters in the 11-mile middle section of the Yawk, tips on matching streamers to water types and temperature, pike on the fly in UK, and some great stories of trout so big they straighten your hook. Let's hear from Rob.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for being on the show. Glad to have you.
Thanks, Steve, for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into the yak or the Yawk.
Yes,
What you call it here.
yes, sir. The Youghiogheny.
Am I okay? Is it the Yawk or the yak?
Yawk.
The Yawk. Okay.
Yeah, it's funny
There you
that the two different spellings are for pronunciations. They do the Yawk, and I see wherever folks get the yak from, but it's Yawk, Yough. The rest of it I can't spell. I just say Youghiogheny.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah, it's a tough one to spell. So anyway, well, listen, you've been to England recently, right? Took the girlfriend
Yes.
over there, and how was that?
Yeah, a little fall vacation, some concerts, and mixed in a little fishing outside of London.
Right. Outside of London. Where'd you
Yeah,
fish out of London?
there was a so it was and I did not know this before I booked the trip. They have seasons. They're very strict with the fishing in certain areas and access and all of that. So we the best option that we had was to go pike fishing, and there's a lake that is outside of London, probably about an hour on the train
Okay.
outside of London.
Yeah.
There's public transportation right to the town. And then there was just this really beautiful private lake that is basically just like a regular, from my view, like a county park. And it had a walking path around it and trees, and there was art sculptures, and it was very
Gosh.
beautiful. And then there were pike in there.
It's
and the gentleman that we fished with, his company is We Fly Fish. He's a really great guy. Um, he has a permit to be able to guide there. And he said that 95% of the folks, they all carp fish there,
Yeah.
and that pike fishing really isn't a thing. So we went there with some flies and some rods and some ultralight tackle and a little bit of everything, and went pike fishing for, I think we hit about a 5-hour session walking around this
Yeah.
pond or lake, I guess you could say. And it was surprising. Very dark, murky water. Tannic, I guess, is a good way to
Okay.
describe it.
Yeah.
And you, no matter what color fly you had, you could not see it. It was that dark, like black water.
Oh my
And
God.
all of a sudden, the rod would get pulled out of your hand. And
Oh, really?
they were the meanest pike that I've ever encountered. I fished for pike a little bit here and there in lakes. Mostly it's a river encounter. And they're strong fighters, but man, there was something about these pike. They were a little bit different for their size. They could pack a punch.
What weight rod were you using?
I was using a really short, I think it was like an 8.8, 10 weight.
Oh, you had a 10 weight. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it wasn't the
And
rod.
it's all roll casting. It's all just
Yeah.
a little bit of roll cast here, roll cast there. There
Okay.
were some areas, but you have to remember I couldn't tell you how old the area was, but it was a lot of overgrown trees. It was very beautiful, picturesque,
Huh, cool.
bright sunny day, but a lot of structure. So backcasting, plus there was a walking path behind you, and there was people staring at you in a very awkward way, wondering what you were doing. And I don't look like your typical Londoner, so
Yeah.
they just couldn't figure out what was going on. But once they saw us, we were going for pike. I thought it was pretty cool.
Was anybody else wearing a flannel shirt while you were over there?
Yeah, few.
Yeah,
Well, mostly at the
right?
concerts we went to, because it was more Americans than
Oh, it was.
and Brits over there. Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
I was in Madrid a few years ago, and I had on a red plaid shirt, and I think I was the only human being in the entire city with a red plaid shirt on. Like they just don't wear that kind of stuff over there.
No, I would, with the kids say my drip. The drip was not quite European enough, I don't think. But
Is that right?
I was comfortable in my drip, so I felt good
You know
about
what? That's all that matters.
That's
in my
right. That's
opinion.
right.
You be you.
That's
you know,
me.
Even in Europe.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, let's shift gears back here to the States, and let's talk about your neck of the woods. You're in Southwest Pennsylvania, I believe. That's where the Yawk is. And tell me about the trout fishing and the fishing in general in your part of the world.
We are lucky to have, in my opinion, one of the better tailwaters east of the Mississippi River. The Youghiogheny River is probably roughly, they say, between 90 and 95% stocked fish, but they're all holdover fish. This region of southwestern Pennsylvania was heavily impacted by industry, steel. I mean, we're not that far from Pittsburgh.
Years ago.
Years and years and years ago.
Yeah.
So it was basically a dead river at one point, in the 40s and 50s. And it started making a really nice rebound back in the 70s and 80s. And during that time, because it is a tailwater, there was a lot of talks of it potentially having, being a trout fishery. And so it basically a stocking program began. There was a Trout Unlimited chapter. Chestnut Ridge Trout Unlimited was up here doing a ton of amazing work and really turning this into an amazing year-round fishery because of the water temperature. The insect life came back after the industrial times. We have every major hatch the East Coast has, maybe not quite in the numbers, but we have them all. Everything from spring bugs to fall bugs. Even in the wintertime, we still have our midges, our early black stones in the winter. Spring, we've got our Hendricksons, caddis, sulfurs, drakes, you name it. We go all the way through, all through the summer, Cahills. And it's really great. And the main section that I'm kind of referring to is the middle Youghiogheny. So that is designated by the state of Pennsylvania as a trophy trout water. You're allowed to harvest only one fish. I think it's over 16 or 18 inches. I'm not quite sure. They changed the regulations and they recently just changed it. It used to be 2 fish 14, but they're beside the point. It is not really known as a put and take fishery. It is something that is revered and respected by local anglers and people around the region as a it's as good as a Western tailwater as you can get. We don't have the density numbers of, Watauga or some of those rivers over the Holston over in Tennessee. But we do have some really, really good stuff going on over here, and it's just really getting good. And I've been so lucky to be a part of that growth, and being a part of what the Youghiogheny River has turned into from a fishing standpoint. Also, in general, from a not polluted standpoint, it's great to see as well.
Coffee, the angler's ritual, a reason to leave your cozy covers, even if you aren't headed to the river. We started Angler's Coffee because, well, we love to fish, we love coffee, and we care. Think of it as the rise before the rise.
So when did kind of the river turn the corner and kind of go from being thought of as polluted to now this world-class fishery?
I would say I wasn't around, but from what I hear from stories of anglers and people at local Trout Unlimited chapters and such, it really kind of got going in the 80s with water quality. 90s was really starting to get it going, and then really the first. I mean, there have always been whitewater rafting companies, but then they kind of started having fishing guides. Laurel Highlands Guide Service, who I'm the lead guide for and partner, started in 2003.
Oh, good.
So, and that was Jimmy DeBias and Ernie Perbanik. They had fished it for years. So leading up to that is when it started getting really good. And there was also it was kind of ebb and flow with the industry of fly fishing, in that it became cool again. And other than, dunking a worm for a trout, it was kind of cool to start seeing all these insects, and you're out there fishing and you start seeing trout rising to them, and you're like, wait a minute, how can I change this perspective? And
it's cool.
And it's all been uphill from there, and it continues to be uphill. We've got a lot of amazing conservation organizations in the region that do an amazing job. Not only the Youghiogheny itself, but its tributaries. Just was elected to the board of directors for Mountain Watershed and Youghiogheny River Keeper. Both amazing organizations that do a lot of really great work, along with Chestnut Ridge Trout Unlimited. There's a lot of really good stuff going on in the region right now, and we have a front seat to it, and you can too. Come down for a float.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'd love to. Well, tell me a little bit about the work that is going on. What are they working on?
There's a lot of AMD, abandoned mines, that are left over from the steel industry. Have you ever been out and seen an Orange Creek or an Orange River?
Yes.
So that is prevalent in this region. And you had your abandoned mine that sat there, rainwater gets in, fills up, sucks in all those nutrients, mostly sulfur, iron, things like that, and then it eventually just leaks out. It alters the pH, whatever it's flowing into, and that's ultimately in the end what devastated the Youghiogheny River. But remediation, limestone dosers on those kinds of things.
What's a limestone doser? What is that?
So the water that flows out of that orange water that flows out of those mines, the abandoned mines, the pH on it is off, and you need to have a specific pH for fish survival, for insect survival, for people to even go in. It depends on the alkalinity, right? So limestone has a high pH, and what it does is it neutralizes the water coming out. So a doser is almost like a filter. So it's like a filter that it goes through.
Oh, really?
Changes the pH, and then it eventually gets into the main river.
So they can fix this. They can
target. It's expensive.
I bet it is.
Yeah. So you have taxpayer dollars. The state once those lands are abandoned, the state takes them over, and you have the Department of Environmental Protection, the mining departments. You have groups like Mountain Watershed Association that actually own the land and get funding to create limestone dosers, ways to regulate it. Chestnut Ridge Trout Unlimited is doing it. And that's on a yearly basis. You have to keep buying the limestone, adding it, filling it in. And that's one of the ways to mitigate the abandoned mines. There's also ponds, which is like one settling pond that filters into another pond that's got a different filter, and it's kind of goes down the line of these filtration ponds, and then eventually it goes into the river. So it's neat. That's on Indian Creek, which is another really cool recovery story as well, which is a major tributary to the Youghiogheny. Doing some awesome work on there as well. But it's a battle of legacy pollution and new potential pollution that we have, whether it's existing mines that are still operating. Fracking has been huge in this region.
Oh, it is.
As well.
Is that creating new problems?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, bottom line, it has a negative impact on water quality. So it creates challenges very consistently. It was a boom. It's slowed down a bit. There was a rush to go in and create and basically dig, create pipes, put them in the ground. And then basically you're under those grandfathered permits to begin the fracking process. So your wells are there, and then you can go in as you please because you own the mineral rights now to extract it. The dirtiest part of the fracking is not only the fracturing of underneath to extract the gas, it's the byproduct that comes out. So they have to use water, which requires a ton of water. So think of it as like a pressure washer, right? They put that sucker underground, fracture and pull all that out, and they collect it. I'm not exactly sure of the process, but in general, that's how they do it. And what happens is that the wastewater from that process it's lethal. There's chemicals in it that they have to use. There's a cocktail that they use that was an industry secret for a while. I think it's out there now. And that water used to not be able to be recycled. You would use it, pump it out, and then it had to go somewhere. There's places that you could take it. There was also certain businesses that cheated, or drivers that cheated and just would pull over to the side of the road and dump it out instead of having to have the cost of the day of driving the truck and everything. So everything created a headache. I would say right now it's a lot better than it was. But that was also like, it was kind of like a gold rush, like there was a lot of companies here from Texas and Oklahoma, and they were drilling wells as fast as they could and buying land. Rights.
All right. So Rob, let me pause you just for a second. Back to the Yawk. Is it orange?
No, sections of it are down low on the bottom.
But where you fish, like the trout areas,
the trout areas
clean? Is the water clean? What's it look like?
I would say we're essentially headwaters. We're within like 70 miles of the 130 is kind of mountainous Appalachia, and then a lot more, which is where a lot of the minerals were extracted. But the plants and the facilities and the factories were down lower on the Youghiogheny River, down below Connellsville. So where we trout fish, and specifically the middle Youghiogheny, it flows through a state park. It's a completely protected area. It is one of the most beautiful floats that you can take in the East Coast. It's absolutely spectacular. Big raging river. We've got class 1s, class 2s. Some of them can sneak into a 3 depending on water flow, but usually at that point the river's chocolate milk anyway, so we're not out there, but it's fun to go.
I read class 5 up farther upstream even.
Yeah, the upper Yawk. Yeah,
the upper's got some 5s. Okay.
Yeah, Maryland, Friendsville area, Oakland up that way. There's Swallow Falls, and then below Swallow Falls, I think that little area in the boating community, and boaters, I mean like whitewater kayakers. It is considered the top Yawk, and that's kind of where you go earn your medal in the whitewater community. It's legit. Right? Yeah, it's legit.
Pretty serious stuff.
It's very technical.
So, all right. So if you could give us kind of like the overview, like first of all, where is the Yawk for people aren't from, I didn't know where it was till you and I talked.
So
where does it start, and give us kind of an idea of the character of the water?
Western Maryland, Eastern West Virginia. and right on the border of Pennsylvania. If you look at a map, we're kind of down in that corner there.
Yeah.
I'm in a town called Confluence.
Uh-huh.
So the river flows through it starts in West Virginia, Maryland border up in the Appalachian Mountains. There's 2 springs up there. And it floats down from there through mostly Maryland. It kind of borders the Maryland, West Virginia line. And that section is the top/upper Yawk, and it's 43 miles long.
Okay.
And that's from like the headwaters, the top of the mountain. There's a lot of history out here. So there's a lot of interesting things that you can find out about the river. So if I start to bore some of you guys, it gets a little
let's hear it, man. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. So that's the upper Yawk. There is some fishing sections on the upper Yawk, mostly on the Maryland side. It's stocked by the state of Maryland. There's a hatchery right near there. It gets stocked hard, man. If you want to go out there and stretch your line out and get ready for the season, wait till like 2 weeks after opening day. There's hatches up there. It's parking lots right there. You can walk in, do a little wade fishing. Great place to go. Take a kid. It's a good place to go fishing.
Trout. You're talking trout fishing.
Yes, sir. Yep, all trout.
Okay, all right. And is the water nice and cold, spring fed?
Yeah, that's cold water. There's also there's a larger lake, Deep Creek, Maryland is a big recreation area, very heavily traveled from like the DC area. And there's a lake there that they get water from as well.
Yeah,
up on the upper Yawk. So that creates a nice cooler water there as well. It's a Western Maryland, Western Pennsylvania trout stream. The trout do hold over if the conditions are right from the year, but you have drought years and things like that. Even the big rivers, we struggle a little bit. We don't quite have that. So the upper Yawk basically goes into Youghiogheny Lake. Youghiogheny Lake is massive. It is operated by the Army Corps of Engineers. It is number one purpose built for flood control. There is recreation on the lake. There's houses along it. There's motorized boats, pontoon boats. There's restaurants. Really, really cool lake. You can go hang out there on the summer. Pike, smallmouth, walleye. There's some groups doing some really good work on trying to get the walleye back in there. And that basically ends at it's 184 feet tall dam.
Oh my gosh, it's big.
It's a monster, and it's the outflow area, which is awesome, which is basically where our half-day trips start, right in that area there.
Sure.
That outflow, that lake is massive, and it has cold water coming out of it all year long. The only times that we get a little tough is like late August into September. That surface water eventually works its way to the bottom of the lake, depending on the summer, and drought conditions as well can impact it too. And so that's about the only time really that the middle Yawk and the outflow really aren't. You can fish it, but we always stay away. We've got an amazing smallmouth fishery that I'll talk about that we like to break off and go catch some smallies too. Yeah, so the lake ends there. That's about let me see, hold on. I even wrote this down just to make sure. So the middle technically starts at mile marker 59. So for 59 miles, you have the upper Yawk and including the lake, and then you have the outflow. And this is where the trout fishery really, really picks up.
Yeah.
So from the dam basically to Ohiopyle, which is another town we'll talk about in a little bit, that's about 11 miles long. And that is technically considered the Youghiogheny River, the middle Yawk. Okay. And that is our bread and butter. That is where we do probably 90% of our trips. When we're not talking smallmouth or brook trout trips or anything like that.
Yeah.
We focus mostly on our trout fishery. Directly out of the dam is a lot of public access area. It's Army Corps land. There's wonderful trout that live in there year round. It is also home to where Chestnut Ridge Trout Unlimited has a nursery. So we actually raise fish that we float stock down the middle throughout the season, usually in like May or June. And those fish are roughly in the 8 to 10 inch range.
Yeah.
And they hold over very, very well. And that's a really great program that we have right there because it's at the outflow. They've got oxygen tanks there that they pump into the water to make sure that the oxygen's there. The pH monitors everything for these trout. It's a cooperation between Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, the Army Corps of Engineers, and Chestnut Ridge Trout Unlimited. So those trout live there, are raised there, and then they get floated down the river by us in our boats down the middle Yawk through the town of Confluence. You've got about 2.5 miles to Ramcat. That 2.5 mile stretch is a very good fishery as well. It has a lot of vegetation, no, not really rapids, kind of flat pools, good dry fly action, access is available. In the town of Confluence, there's a parking lot initially on Ramcat Road. And then right down the road there is the start of the state park. You can park there and walk up the river from there. There's a lot of houses around, and this being one of them. So we try and avoid as many people in the yards as we can.
How far are you from the river?
Probably about 25 feet. It's over here to my left.
So you can check conditions pretty easily, huh?
It's a huge benefit to us as a business to have the river right there. It's so great. You can see whether it's the hatches. And the other thing I was going to say, in that 2-mile stretch and Confluence area, we pick up 2 major tribs, Laurel Hill Creek and the Castleman River. And the water that flows out of the dam, 98% of the time is clean, cold water. But we have influences from 2 other mountain streams that are both trout streams, Laurel Hill more than the Castleman. But if they get rain, they can muddy the river up. So that can be really beneficial living here on the river and seeing it. If we do get a rainstorm, seeing how much we have a mud line out there. I'm not kidding you. There's the dam water, and then there's the Castleman water. It's muddy. And if it's like 75% this way, that means like only 25% of it is Laurel Hill and Castleman. We're going to go for a float and go catch fish.
Down there,
the other way.
We're
probably just going to do a dam float. So it fluctuates. But Rob, it's great.
I've heard that Laurel Hills. I'm just looking on my trout routes app before we got started here, and it shows us a class 1 stream. It's supposed to be good fishing.
We run wade trips up there as well. Laurel Hill itself it's got access state forest areas. It's got amazing brook trout feeder streams, tributaries to Laurel Hill coming off the ridges. Absolutely excellent brook trout areas as well. But Laurel Hill has some really great fishing up around the park, the town of Humbert. People are really nice about it as well. There's a lot of houses and places along Laurel Hill, but there's a lot of fishing permitted, and the signage is up in different areas. But Laurel Hill's a long one. It's a big.
It looked like it.
Creek. It's probably like 40, 50 miles, maybe even a little longer. I'm not quite sure. And it gets a lot of good, clean water to it as well. So that helps out. Castleman, on the other hand, Castleman's got some issues. There's some active mining up on the Castleman. It's legacy pollution. It's got a lot of farmland. Sediment is a major issue with the Castleman. I'm working with, and the Mountain Watershed Association that I mentioned before. We're trying to figure out ways to help, because really right now, like the biggest threat to what we've got going on the middle Yawk from a biological standpoint, Castleman's probably the biggest threat. You can still fish the Castleman though. It's amazing. There's in certain areas, there's a trout stock area on the Castleman that fishes really well. It also has a really solid population of smallmouth bass. They're not monsters, but you can get them up. We've gotten them up to like the 16, 17 inch range, which is a strong
fish.
Bass. The only problem with the Castleman is it is really dependent on flows. If it's really low, I'm sure you've heard the term walking on greased bowling balls. It's a tough wader, and to float it, you need the water to be at a certain level, and usually that level is kind of like in that muddy area. So the Castleman flows into the Confluence area. Excellent fishing for that first 2.5 miles when you get to the point which is called Ramcat. Ramcat is the start of the state park, and it's 9 miles to Ohiopyle. And we put in right above Ramcat, and our floats run from there all the way down to Ohiopyle. That is the designated trophy trout section of the Youghiogheny.
Oh, it is not up by the dam.
No, that's really? a year-round fishery. There's conversations, but the state does do a decent amount of stocking up there. And there's a mentality, both good and bad. I mean, I get it. You buy a fishing license, you should be allowed to keep a fish. I don't have any.
So just different regs.
It's just different regulations. The trophy trout stretch changes because it's kind of like I think for the state, when it initially came to fruition, they saw that it was in a state park. They saw the water quality was improving. They started seeing the bug life. So they turned it into a trophy trout designation. There's only 2 other trophy trout designations in the state of Pennsylvania. And it might have changed. The Upper Youghiogheny River,
Yeah.
and the Clarion River. I think
the
those
Clarion,
2
sure.
have those designations as well, and the Youghiogheny, as far as I know. I could be off on that one.
And we did a show on the Clarion.
Clarion's rock stars. There's
Yeah,
some
yeah.
there that are good.
Yeah.
So
I know you're giving
Yep.
us the overview, but I'm kind of curious, like how wide is the river, like by the dam, and when it gets in the trophy trout section? Like, give me an idea of
so
CFS width.
the from the dam down to confluence, and that's where the Laurel Hill and the Castleman come together. It
Yeah.
is man, you're gonna make me do measurements.
Well, 100
Probably
yards.
like 50 to 100 feet across.
Oh, okay. All right. Is it
It's
ripping pretty good?
It's very wadeable.
Okay.
That's a really good wade area. The area when you start getting further downriver, especially into Ramcat and down to Ohiopyle,
Yeah.
it's big water, boulders.
Okay.
The bank is very steep. The trail that you access it, the Middle Youghiogheny River you can't drive down that 9-mile stretch. You can only access it through a bike trail.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And the Chestnut Ridge Trout Unlimited has built fishing stairs down to the river. So there's areas you can go down, like there are every few miles that you can walk down to the river. Wading the Yawk River, you can do it in many areas if you know where to go. But I would say probably like 70% of the Middle Yawk, 65% of the Middle Yawk is treacherous wading, even in good conditions.
That's what I've read. I read that
Yeah.
it's treacherous and it's tough.
But the nice thing is the areas where you can wade there's unbelievable fishing there. There's really good spots. But the Yawk is not easy. She's a tough river because it's intimidating. So I said like 100 feet up in the confluence, down lower. I mean, it's massive. I mean, the valleys, I know you said I sent you some pictures, but it's wider. It's probably twice the size of like the Delaware River width wise. It's huge.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really
It's a big river. And it gets really narrow when there's rapids. And then when there's flats, it widens way out, and it follows the valley. You go past Sugarloaf Mountain, McCune Mountain, Turkey Foot Mountain. You're talking 2,300 high valley wall. Yeah. Ohiopyle Gorge, or the Youghiogheny Gorge, depending on who you talk to, is right in the middle of that stretch in the island area. And that is the second steepest gorge in the state of Pennsylvania, next to the Pennsylvania Grand Canyon, which is up in north central PA.
No kidding. So
it's a wall of green. Come in the fall, it'll blow your mind.
Wow. So
the fall colors, man,
scenic.
like mid to late October to early November is like the fishing's incredible. And the foliage is just spectacular.
All right, so you get to Ohiopyle, and is that pretty much it for where you guys?
That's our trip. Yeah. So that section of the middle is 9 miles long. Our trips are usually between 8 and 10 hours. And you're talking everything from decent smallmouth. I mean, you can get them up to 20 inches in there. It's been a little while. I think I sent you one picture, my recent picture of it was a 18 3/4, 19, almost 19-inch smallmouth. So we get them in there. But the real belle of the ball is the trout. The trout fishing is just it is lights out. Brown trout up to 2 feet are on a weekly basis caught, no problem.
Wow.
Seasonally, we move, we hook, we land in that 2 foot, 24 to 30 inch range. Biggest brown trout. I didn't see it personally. One of our guides, Mike Engelhart, was out with a friend of ours, Josh Refner, and they got a 31 that they got.
Wow, really?
Taped out, and the picture of it, which I won't show you, it's pretty impressive. But
I got to see that picture.
No, hell no. I've been playing the secrecy with that one. But I can tell the story. That's no problem.
The background out for me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I get what you're.
But so you can encounter. It's a world-class brown trout fishery, and it's only getting better. There's a
So
lot
it's
of
all browns. Any rainbows? All browns?
the rainbows are, oh my gosh, some of the most beautiful rainbows, and I'll get you
So
some
both.
pictures as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely gorgeous rainbows. So it's browns and rainbows mostly. Occasional brook trout will sneak in from the tributaries. We have 5 Class A brook trout streams that feed into the middle Youghiogheny River in that 4 or 5. 4 or 5 Class A brook trout streams that feed
Okay.
into that middle stretch.
Yeah.
That you sometimes those fish will drop into the big river, depending on conditions, what's going on, whether it's drought or they're just feel like eating. We do catch them on occasion. It's very rare, but we do get them. So
Yeah.
we have our brown trout and our larger rainbows. I mean, just pink cheeks, streaks on down, pink streaks down the side. The fish that we get in the pictures that your guys are going to see and gals, it's they almost look wild. They look so naturalized, and there's potential for wild trout. There's populations in the Yawk. It hasn't been researched extensively,
Okay.
but I think the time might be coming for it. But the fish that we do put in there, the state only stocks fingerlings.
Yeah.
And
So usually, if they're getting big, they've been in there for
they're
a
that
couple
big.
years.
If they're starting that small, they put thousands upon thousands of them in there. They get into that size, the colors, the way they look, they naturalize. The bug life is so abundant. They have such an amazing food source.
And they fight pretty good.
Well, the current is a good one. Depending on where you get those babies, you can get them in the middle of a rapid too. So yeah, but they are rainbows, man. They fight like crazy. And the craziest part is, like, you could be stripping streamers down a bank in a riffle into a calm pool, and you can catch a brown trout, a rainbow trout, and a smallmouth bass in like a 25.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah,
no
they're all
kidding.
right there. They're all hanging out. It's crazy. I mean, when it gets later in the summer in some of those slow pools, and it's middle of the day, the trout are sleeping, we throw poppers on and go work tree lines in those slow pools, and those smallmouth come up and absolutely.
Yeah, they like the hot weather.
Oh,
Where are you getting those muskies?
That's lower
Okay.
down the river. We don't get the muskies there. So
Yeah.
So to finish the middle, we stop in Ohiopyle. Ohiopyle is the Ohiopyle State Park is the 3rd most visited state park in the state of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
It is a destination. You've got Frank Lloyd Wright. He's got 2 buildings that are out there. Architecturally,
nice.
we have the falls. There's a gorgeous 19-foot waterfall right in the middle of the park, right parking area there. It's a really cool mountain town. Whitewater boating, rafting, bike trail. Ohiopyle State Park has miles upon miles of hiking trails, waterfalls and tributaries. You got Meadow Run, Cucumber Falls, waterfalls everywhere. It's a really cool area, and that starts from the waterfalls, from the falls down to Connellsville is what we consider the lower Yawk, and that is mostly whitewater rafting. We, as a business, are not permitted to guide down there.
Yeah.
Do we fish down there on our own? Yes. Are there fish down there? Yes. Are they really hard to get to? Yes. Are they really stupid? Absolutely.
If you can get in there, huh?
But if you can get in there, man, it's totally worth it. It really, really is. But all I can say is use extreme caution. There's a lot of folks that are buying boats these days and think they can bomb rapids and stuff. And just be careful out there. I see it on Class 2 rapids, let alone a Class 3 or Class 4. You can get in trouble
flipping in.
down there.
Tell me about this trail that runs along a good portion.
Yeah, the trail, the bike trail. It's again another world-class thing that we have right here in beautiful Western Pennsylvania, all the way to DC.
Wait, a trail goes from where to where? The
trail goes from Washington D.C. to Pittsburgh, or Pittsburgh to Washington D.C., depending on which way you want to ride.
Really?
There's both a little uphill in it. It is called, so there's 2 sections of it. The Great Allegheny Passage is from Pittsburgh to, pretty sure it's Cumberland, Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And then from Cumberland, Maryland to Washington, D.C., that is the C&O Towpath Trail. It's all connected. It's all crushed limestone. It's an old rail line. So it's a rails to trails.
The rails trails, sure.
If folks are familiar with that. And it is, it's not quite, I think it's like almost 300 miles long, or maybe a little more.
Yeah. Have you done any of that? I mean, how much have you done?
I used to work for a nonprofit, Venture Outdoors, back in the day, and we did one of the first sojourns of it. It's actually when Pittsburgh turned 200 or 250 years old. We organized a bike ride from Washington, D.C. to Pittsburgh. And we carried a declaration of congratulations to the city of Pittsburgh. And it was when Obama was in office. He signed a letter and declaration, and our group, we did hotels, and it takes days. I mean, it depends on how fast you ride, but it could take like 6 days. And we rode it all the way to the mayor in the city of Pittsburgh.
Oh, is that right?
So that's what I was a part of that, but I've done many of the sections. If I probably put all the sections together, I'd say I'm pretty close to doing it all. But it's a huge boom for our region. It also a huge boom for our trail towns, and trail towns influence Ohiopyle.
Yeah, sounds cool.
West Newton, Connellsville.
Yep. All right, let me ask you, Rob. Let me ask you, because you and I were talking before we turned the recorder on about some of the cool history in this area. There's a couple things that have happened on this river in there.
And yes, I actually had to do some homework before we started our conversation. I will preface it mostly with this, is that one of our guides, Casey Shope, he's a local dude, and he is a massive history guy. And most of the information I got from him is he's a history buff. And if you are interested in a history float and catching some fish, he is your guy.
He's your guy.
Really good dude. Really good dude. Yeah. So we had Youghiogheny. What does it mean? And then I'm going to read off some notes. So
good question.
Yeah. What does Youghiogheny mean? A river flowing in contrary direction.
It's an Indian name.
It's assuming. An Indian name. So I'm not sure if it was. So we had the Lenape.
Yep.
The Lenape, the Delaware, the Seneca, and the Shawnee, all in this region. This was a big hunting area. Yeah. So at some point, they were all settled here, but they didn't settle. It was more camps and kind of moving for hunting purposes. But anyway, so that's what Youghiogheny means. A river flowing in contrary direction. And it flows north. So we kind of talked about that in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's basically the headwaters of the Potomac and the headwaters of the Yawk are kind of right around there. Potomac floats to DC. The Yawk floats basically to Pittsburgh, just like that bike trail we talked about. So it's pretty wild, but it flows north in a contrary direction. And because of the DC to Pittsburgh connection, during the war, French and Indian War, a young colonel, British colonel named George Washington.
Imagine that.
He was tasked with finding a water route to, I think at the time they called it the Forks of the Ohio, which is now Pittsburgh, the point in Pittsburgh. The confluence there.
Yeah.
And he was tasked with finding a water route. So he followed the Potomac up. He met the headwaters of the Youghiogheny. Thought, okay, great. I'm going to go down the Yawk. It ends, he didn't know at the time, but it ends 16 miles up from downtown Pittsburgh on the Youghiogheny River. And so he was looking for a water route. And unfortunately, they landed in Ohiopyle. And the 19-foot waterfall was a large deterrent for him. And that was the end of the scouting mission. But during that time, you had Washington was obviously a colonel. He lost out here. He did.
He was in a battle, and he got his butt kicked.
He got his butt kicked in about, I forget where the battle was, but
with the French.
So much history out here, it boggles my mind. I drive past all these places, and I need to stop in and take a look, educate myself.
Come on now.
But so George Washington, he canoed the Yawk down lower, all the way down to where it ends in McKeesport. And that's where another thing that we talked about is where when Lewis and Clark were on their journey, the Lewis and Clark Trail is actually out here in Western Pennsylvania. Forbes Trail is part of it, and other more hiking trails, a lot of recreation around this area. But yeah, they in McKeesport, Lewis and Clark had a company there build them a raft to float. And it unfortunately was, I think they said 6 weeks late. So it was one notoriously the longest delay on Lewis and Clark's journey.
They were keel
was getting a boat in McKeesport.
It's like their main thing, their keel boat.
Yeah, they needed
it. It was built on the Yawk. Okay.
That's right.
Oh, that's super cool. How about that? And Lewis and Clark keeps popping up. You know, when those guys fly fished.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they ate fish.
I'm sure I think they probably used nets or something.
Yeah, they probably saw a lot of fish.
Yeah, no, that's super cool.
Yep. So a lot of really amazing history in the region, and kind of just to touch on the end of that is like, you know, when folks are looking for a destination to go on a trip, this region has a lot to offer. Not only, you know, architecture, restaurants. We're close to Deep Creek, Maryland, which is a huge destination area for families. It's a 30-minute drive over to us. So there's a lot of really neat things in this area for vacations, and there's plenty to do. And if you ever need tips, advice, or visiting the area,
You're the man.
Our contact information will be out there. We thrive as small communities out here on people coming and seeing us and spending their money here. It helps us all a lot.
So we had Rob on my Destination Angler Adventures podcast. Maybe you guys caught that. And he told the story of Fish X. Rob's quite a storyteller, Rob. I wondered if you got another epic tale for us. I can think of a couple you were running by me a few weeks ago, but I'll let you dive in.
You know what? It's funny, when I was you'd messaged me and I was thinking about it, and so many more of my fish stories usually are the ones that I don't get a picture of and I don't land. The fish that gets away is what keeps me up at night, especially as a guide.
Right.
It is horrifying. It just happened. Just a quick one. It was 2 weeks ago. Mike Engelhart, one of our guides, and his dad and I, we just did a quick wintertime floated the middle, not quick one. We were out there all day. Who are we kidding? But we did a middle float, and it was high water, and we knew it's February. It's, big streamers, throwing streamers.
Yeah.
In slow pools, there's a lot of risers right now. We found a lot of fish. We caught some fish on top, early black stones.
Sure.
So fishing was really good. We're going down, and it was a Yawk day. It's February, so it's not a numbers day. You're hunting giants. But the Yawk is so finicky sometimes that not sometimes, a lot of the times the Yawk can be very finicky in what she wants to give up. And we've all deciphered that there's just windows, and there's certain areas where things happen, and there's certain areas where they don't happen. And if you're there at the right place at the right time, it can be magical. We're getting down towards the end of this float, and it's we call it the money pools. So it's riffle, good little rapid, slow, calm water, riffle, rapid, slow, calm water. And these pools that we go in are deep. I mean, like 25 feet. So you got to get down there sometimes. But sometimes those fish will move up. And in these slow moving pools, now obviously there's current in there, but there's seams around these giant boulders. And you always, you work the foam lines. Foam is home, right? So you're always working foam lines, whether you're working streamers along the bank or you're bringing them out around these rocks to find structure. Well, Mikey's on the front of the boat, and we did okay. We didn't do great. And we were getting towards the end of the day, and he's out there flapping around. He doesn't quit, man. He's tenacious is a good way.
I like that guy already.
He fishes. Yeah, he doesn't quit because he knows what's going to happen. He's been out there. I've been out there too long. And it was crazy. Within I'm going to say 45-foot stretch, he hooked at least a 20, and it got off. And he hooked one over 2 feet, and it got off.
Came unbuttoned. How'd that happen?
It just came unbuttoned.
Yeah.
Bulldogging, you do what you got to do. And to get those fish to turn and to get that net, to get them up, they thrash. They're strong fish. They live in class 2, 3 whitewater. They're strong, healthy, big fish. Even in these slow pools, there's a lot of current down there. And sometimes they get in the net, sometimes they don't. And when they come unbuttoned like that, I had a shot at the big one, but it was still probably 1.5 feet, 2 feet under the water. It wasn't when they're bringing their head up, you get them with an uppercut, bringing that net in.
You saw him.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, we saw him. And it came up and it got right there and turned and bulldogged and rolled right off the hook.
Yeah. What are their tricks? What do they? You say they like to roll.
Rolling is the big one. Yeah, rolling when they're big, especially when they get close to the boat. The worst place to have a fish, especially a big fish, is the front of the boat.
The front. Why is
you
that?
don't want to fight a fish down below you. You want to try and get them off to the side. And as a guide, the best thing you can do is position the boat so that you're get into slower water if you can. You want to get into the slower water. The amount of current that you have in a river that we have, to land a large fish, even landing a 14 to 16 inch fish can be difficult. So you want to get it through that area and get it there. Sometimes you don't have the choice. You could hook that fish and it could run 100 yards downriver, or it could run 100 yards upriver. Upriver, you're in trouble because we can't get that boat back up there usually.
To the rapids,
you know what I mean? I'm not. I try and do push-ups here and there, but I ain't getting that boat back up those rapids.
Okay.
So there's just it's it's the constant pressure. It's also the adrenaline of being out there
Yeah.
all day, 8, 9 hours. You have your shot. I had my shot. Mikey's had his shot. All of our guides, clients, everyone's had their shot. And sometimes, then that's the Yawk. It just,
Yeah.
those fish, they got their own program. We work extremely hard to try and match those programs so that we
Right.
can be successful, and we have been extremely successful.
Well,
But
they're not on your program.
but
They're on
when
their own
those
program.
moments happen, Fish X is even a story of the one that got away.
Yeah, it was.
We've landed really, really amazing fish, and we've seen really amazing fish, but it's the ones that you lose that drive you nuts.
What were you throwing? Yeah, this was just a week or two ago.
God,
Right?
I don't,
Streamers or what? Like,
yeah, it's some streamer.
okay. What kind? I mean, what kind of streamer patterns do you typically throw then in the winter?
We I like Kelly Gallup's. He's got an interesting concept of water temperatures and style of flies and what they do. 40 degrees and under for us, really, I've learned over the years, like 45 and under. You want something that kind of that jigs a little bit more. And a lot of these flies that you'll see, they got weight to them. Now there's been a lot of changes in line leaders to get that hover fly, that swim fly.
Yeah,
they can get back and forth. And I fish a lot of those and experiment a lot with those as well.
Sink tips on those typically or no?
Sink tips, full intermediates. Fish a lot of Scientific Angler full intermediate lines.
Okay.
6, 7s, and 8s all the way up. We fish 8 weights out here. I mean, we're throwing big bugs, sex dungeon style, dungeon style flies, anything like that. But one thing that we do hold true, colder water, black and white.
Huh.
We visually feel, and I've done enough research on it. Fish, when it's really cold, especially trout, they don't pick up colors quite as well. So it's more a silhouette game. So that's why something,
the cold water does that. You're saying the fish,
colder water.
Really?
Yeah.
Not the clarity of the water. It's more that.
So that's the thing too, is like our water, we call it green water. So it's runoff water, right?
Yeah.
Which is in Montana all over the place. So that probably has a little bit to it, that milky kind of green color.
Okay, a little off color. Yeah.
But something about a solid silhouette seems to do better than anything that's really bright and flashy. Depending on obviously the conditions, but we do like to fish that leech styles, bunny style flies. We can throw, D&Ds. We like fishing those a lot too when we're getting into the, it just really depends on where you are in the river. Flat pools, you can fish those kinds of flies, those swim flies really, really effectively at the ends and tailouts of pools where the water's a little bit calmer and those fish are kind of sitting there waiting. You can deal with something kind of hovering in there.
Sure. Yeah.
You're going through water. You're basically a rapid, a riffle, or anything like that, really stronger moving water. Those fish are in straight ambush mode. So you need to get something out there down to them, and you need to be able to connect with it very, very quickly to get that to move. Now you can get it out there, let it sink 1, 2, 3, and then bring it. But you're in a moving boat that's going through. You've got a guide. You've got a person in the back of the boat, a person in the front of the boat. You're both working a bank. So you need to be extremely effective in covering the area that you want to fish.
Sure.
So you decipher that at the beginning. Okay, look, when we're getting into rapids, the tail out is what we really, really, really want to focus on. Okay, we're going to focus on tail outs. All right, so we're going to fish more swim flies. Okay, we're going to get into more rapids. We think the fish, it's in the summertime, we'll fish more like a woolly bugger style fly, maybe a little bit jazzed up, which I'll send you some pictures of those. Those are some of my favorite. But you can fish those anywhere. You can fish those in that faster water. You can get a lot of jigging action. We have a tremendous amount of crayfish and sculpins in this one.
Do you? Okay.
So a lot of the fly patterns are sculpin or crayfish, mute colors, olives, oranges, browns, tans. At times we've had success with really bright, flashy, big, oh my God. The craze of throwing, chucking streamers and all that. We're out there throwing like double bunnies that are like 8 inches, and we still do on occasion. But really the idea that we've really figured out, and I think a lot of the streamer fishing industry has figured out, is that's great. You can haul and cast that thing and throw it a mile and bring it in, and maybe it will move a big fish. But you're better off downsizing, lightening up the fly a little bit, using a leader system and a sink tip or an intermediate line, and covering the water you want to fish more effectively.
All right. And the kind of
getting
water
that
you,
fly and leaving it in that strike zone and that eat zone that you're anticipating that's where it is. You could be completely wrong, but
Yeah.
that's what you deciphered from
keep it in the strike
trip
zone.
before, keeping it in the strike zone. And a lot of those flies and sink tips and lines, there's been so many developments over the years. And thank you to all these amazing companies that keep being out there and talking to anglers and working with anglers and people in the industry are just doing an awesome job.
They're getting it right, aren't they?
Getting the right kind of rod for the right kind of line, and everything, and leader systems, and everybody's thinking. It's so funny. We're all thinking so much for these little pea-brained fish.
What the heck?
I absolutely love it. It's so much fun. But the fact that it could be a great day, and it could be one bug, and it can be that. It's from a streamer perspective.
So Rob, let me pause you just for a second.
Yeah.
You're talking about in the right water.
Yeah.
Tell me your mind, the right water, maybe winter, summer.
It's seasonal. So winter, we're going through it right now. They're deep and slow. There's not as much oxygen in the river.
How deep?
It's cold. That's the thing. I wish that they could make an effective depth gauge on rafts, like a sonar. You know what I mean? Because moving water that fast, trust me, I've tried. It doesn't register because the oxygenation and the bubbles and stuff in the water, the sonars just can't bounce on it. And I can't afford one of those really fancy ones, which I'm sure, I don't know, they probably have them out there. There's probably a guide listening right now, and he's like, "Oh, he doesn't use live."
I got one.
Crazy. Yeah. So you got 9 miles. You got 9 miles. Some areas of water are similar to others. Water temperature wise, that's the one nice thing that we have from the beginning of that 9 mile stretch to the end of that 9 mile stretch.
Yeah.
Maybe a degree or two different.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually
50s,
cold.
50s, 60s. How cold?
Right now it's 30s, 40s.
30s, 40s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Summertime.
Summertime, 50s, 60s, yeah.
50s,
and
okay.
we get more into September, we're like, it gets creeping into the 70s. I barely see it over 70 ever, but
yeah, all right.
Again, we're not out there.
So anyway, but water depth, you're not sure, but I mean, like deeper than 10 feet, you think?
In the winter, yeah, you can be.
Okay,
you can be.
All right.
But usually in the winter too, you're moving a little bit quicker, so you might be focusing more on fishing the banks.
Yeah.
So if you're fishing the banks, you're really only 2 or 3 strips off the bank.
Yeah.
Get into the bank. There's a cut there. You're hoping that there's a big brown tucked up under there somewhere, and like a pocket eddy or something along the fast water. You're going to be in there, something that's only getting down 2-3 feet. That's it, and really you're getting it there. It's sinking about a foot or two, and then you're popping her out. As you get into transition water from the rapids, you've got slow pools that are really, really deep. They can be 20 feet deep. You can poke and prod. We bring spinning rods with us sometimes, and just to see are they down? We're not getting anything. Let's drag some tubes or something down through there just to see if we can get something to move. If they're not up on the banks, they're not eating bugs, they're not in the seams. All right, well, where else can they be? They must be crazy deep, or they're just not eating today.
Cold, not eating. Yeah. What about in the summers? How's it change in the summers for you?
Summers, because the bugs, they move up. You got riffles, dry dropper situations. You can run nymph rigs all day if you want. The dry fly fishing in the summers, we're so lucky. Unlucky in that we operate through a 9 mile stretch of a state park that closes at dusk. So we got to be out of there.
Oh, you do?
Sometime at the magical hour. Yeah. So we can't be out there at night. No,
what time does the sun go down? 9 o'clock out there for you guys?
Yeah. But we're very friendly with the rangers and stuff, and they know our trucks and our trailers. And we have the cell phone number, so if something's wrong, we can text them. We do get cell reception down there. But if they see us there a little bit late, usually they want to see us at the ramp, like when it's kind of borderline. And you shouldn't be there. It's kind of that feeling where it's like, it's dark. I got to get my headlamp out.
Well, I love the fact that you're a guide and you're out with clients at dusk. I mean, usually it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and we're done.
Now, when you come fishing with us, you fish like it's a day because it's a long river.
That's great.
There's a lull. There's going to be
there's a good reason to run out and talk to Rob.
We're good. You will be tired. Make sure you don't try and drive home like more than an hour.
Right.
And if you're coming for 2 days or 3 days, you might want to bring some ibuprofen and maybe a little whiskey or something. I don't know. Maybe get you through the evenings.
Cool. Anyway,
so summertime we've got bugs, just bugs. We're blessed with caddis. We have a ton of caddis. We have great sulfur hatches during the day, which is insane. But we have caddis everywhere. our main summer bugs that we really get lucky with that aren't as crepuscular, dusk and dark, or in the morning is our cahills. We have an amazing cahill. We have an amazing slate drake. And that's really our bread and butter. And
so are you fishing the whole hatch? Are you doing like the, nymphs and emergers and dries and spinners, the whole?
Probably, yeah. Depending on the day, depending on what we're not doing right, we can get into some wet flies, especially in some riffles because we have so many casts. So we do like doing that. Deep nymphing works really well. A general anchor, quote unquote anchor fly, something deep. We pretty much, I pretty much run, and I'm pretty sure some of the other guys, we basically just run a 2-fly system. We've got an indicator we use up top. You're not check nymph in this river. It's not.
I was going to say you're the only guide in Pennsylvania isn't talking about tight line nymph.
Yeah, right? No, you ain't check. All right, you can check nymph in certain areas. I will say that, but you are wade fishing and you know that area very well.
But on this river, you need an indicator fish.
Yeah, if you're floating, I mean, it's so hard. And any of the guys that you'll talk to, my buddy Josh Miller, who you had on like a month.
I'm fishing with Josh this summer. That bugger got me on his list.
I'm going to see him on Sunday. I'll tell him you said hi. Those guys are on another level with that stuff. But anyway, we basically run a 2-fly system, 6-pound fluorocarbon, pretty much similar to what they do. So like a 4-foot section of probably 20-pound mono. That's your where indicator slides there.
Yeah.
Maybe a 3-foot section where indicator slides. Loop the loop. I use a split ring with a loop to that, and then really I'm dropping 6-pound fluoro down 8 feet.
Okay.
And then
6 pound is like 4X maybe. What is that?
3-4. Yeah, you don't mess with anything like 4X is about as light as you want to get on the Yawk.
Because of the size of the fish, or
size of the fish and the current. If you hook a good fish, you're not going to.
You're not going to get on 5X.
And another thing I just had a conversation with the guy is, if you want to bring your own flies, they have to have heavy wire hooks.
Is that right?
These fish will bend out any kind of light wire, anything you got going on.
Well, what's a typical day in that? Okay, it's hard to answer because it all depends. But decent anglers, typical day, how many
dry fly
shots are they getting? How many fish are they getting into the net?
Summertime we fish from a dry fly perspective, it's pods. So it's pods of fish. Okay. It's not river wide. If we're focusing on dry flies, then we are quickly fishing to known dry fly areas and known hatch areas. And those pods can be there at certain times of the day and cannot be there. And we make sure we get to those places at the right place at the right time. We also have to manage 9 miles of river. So sometimes we might have to leave those fish. But pods can be, you can have 30, 40 fish in there rising. You can have 4 fish in there rising. It really just depends. If you're just dry dropper fishing down through riffles and stuff like that, you hook plenty of fish. But when you're really set up on these fish and they're really, really rising, they are in deep, slow water.
Even in the summer.
In the seams. Yeah.
In the seams in the summer.
So you have to set up, we set up above the fish. There's some areas that's a little bit faster current, but it takes a little bit of skill. We call it the slide. So you basically cast out, fish are down below you. You cast out, mend upstream a bunch, and you get in that feeding lane, in that seam. And the first thing that's going down through is that fly. We don't like fishing off to the side of the boat. We like fishing above. Because the other thing is the front angler, we play baseball, 3 strikes and you're out, 1 dry fly angler at a time when we're on top of fish.
You rotate the anglers from front to back?
You get 3 strikes and you're out.
Can you call my buddy and tell him that we need to start
rotating?
Oh, yeah. I got a buddy who doesn't like to rotate so much. If he gets the bow, that's it. It's like, hey, can I sit up?
No, and yeah, even So we take our time with our dry fly fish because they can be a little finicky. There's certain patterns that work better than others. I will say the one thing on the Yawk, especially in those areas, silhouette is key. Not a lot of a very sparse fly works very well.
Clousers? You ever use clousers?
For streamers? Yeah. Clousers catch everything. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's the OG. So we catch a lot of fish on clousers, but with all the technology and you can't leave well enough alone. So you got
things you can throw at it.
Okay,
cool.
Yep. So so awesome fishing, dry fly fishing, summer long. Typical day, we can start the day off and get 5, 6 fish in the boat. It's always great to get one right out near the house here. And then throughout the day, a really, really good day, we're talking 20 fish, 30 fish.
Yeah.
An extremely
Great
good day, we're getting into the 50 range. That's a rarity, and it needs to be a river wide. It's going down, and the fish are all turned on.
It could, I mean, like, could I get a couple over 16 or?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. That sounds like a great day. I need
It
to get
is.
out here.
It's great. And you can also you'll get into some of the meanest 16s you've ever met in your life.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, they take those 5 weights on dries and they give them the business.
I'll bet. Well, actually, say more about what the best anglers are doing that really sets them apart.
Honestly, with this river, it's time. It is time. It is being out there and learning. It's a big river. It's taken me, I learn something new every single time. This is going to be my 18th season out on that river.
Okay.
I've only gotten better the next day. You only get better after the next day. Time is the biggest thing. Technique wise, learning the river, one, is really important. There's a lot of guys that do wade fish it and they're extremely successful. And they know areas. Everybody has the addresses of where some of the bigger fish are. There's some nice pods of them. So it's spending time there, and these fellas and gals spend time, watch these fish,
learning the river.
These fish.
So technique wise, can you say a little bit about what the best anglers are doing? You describe some of your setups and your rigs. And
so
what else
from a streamer perspective, anywhere from, I wouldn't mess with a 6 weight. I'd go 7, 8 weight. This is all fishing out of a boat. This is my perspective from fishing out of a boat. For our river, 7, 8 weights are really good. You can get away with a 6 if you want to, but you're not throwing quite as, robust of a fly, or as heavy as a line to be able to sink down if you got a sinking line. So sinking lines, intermediate lines are great. Floating lines are also good with a little bit heavier of a fly that you can get out there too. That's kind of the streamer setup. Nymphing wise, 6 weights are really great. They're also making some nice 5 weights with that are like 9.5, 9.6, 9.6 5 weights, 9'6" 6 weights for nymphing rods. They're really, really great. I do have some clients that do bring Czech style rods out, but they're not doing like the mono leader setup. They're using them as they're really efficient nymphing rods. If you can get the right line for it to be able to really roll cast it and create distance. That's the one thing they're not overly great with, distance. And you've got to get away from the boat. You remember, like, I try and, I don't know if it's the best acronym, but I tell clients that are new to it and that are not really casting that far, like, you've got to be able to kind of double my oar distance from the boat, because I'm constantly splashing and moving in the water, and I'm constantly back rowing all the way down the river. So I basically explain it as like, okay, the fish are at the end of a conveyor belt, right? So they're constantly have food coming to them. They're always looking upriver, and they're always looking for boats, because this is also not only fishing. You've got whitewater rafting classes or trips. You've got kayakers out there. You've got other boats. So there's a lot of heavy traffic, especially on the weekends. So if you're a fish and you're in a conveyor belt and you're always being conscious of what's around you, it's like being in an inner tube in the middle of the ocean, right? You're there and you're hanging out in an inner tube and you're eating cheeseburger, and all of a sudden a cruise ship or an aircraft carrier starts coming towards you. You're going to move out of the way. You're going to be like, what is that? What is going on? I'm moving to the side. So I have a very good idea of where the holes are and where the fish are going to be in certain times of the year. And if I need you to get over there, sometimes having a longer rod, sometimes having a better line. A lot of our guides, including myself, I have all of my setups that I like to fish. So when you come fishing with me, I can just hand you the rod and say,
okay, you may switch it up.
But if you want to bring your rod, I totally understand it, because when I go fishing with guides, I bring my own stuff.
I find I can save some time if I get on it. If you've got a rod that's rigged up.
Yeah, I've got the nymph rods rigged, I've got the streamer rods rigged, and I've got the dry fly rods.
Here, give me that.
So they're ready to
fish.
And that's the way I like to fish it. And then from a dry fly perspective, 5, 6 weights. 3 or 4 weights, you're going to get yourself into a little bit of trouble. I have one extremely stubborn client that always fishes a 4 weight, and he knows how to fish, so he gets the job done. But he has lost some fish because he can't get them in.
All right. So let me go off camera for a second here. We're at 5 after. Got an hour and 5 minutes. So I'd love to get into your background a little bit.
Okay.
Just because there's a bunch of stuff I want to ask you about your background.
Yeah.
Shift gears for a second, because that's great. We had a great technical
Yeah.
conversation. All right. So how in the world did you end up as a guide, on the Yawk? What's the story? You're from Delaware, right?
I'm from the first and great state of Delaware.
And you're a striper guy,
Tried to
right?
be. I tried to be.
Saltwater striper guy.
Saltwater. So growing up, Delaware, as most folks know, is not very big. You can drive from the top, which is where I'm from, is Newark, Delaware. And you can get down to the beach area, Lewis, Rehoboth, Cape Henlopen, and all the way down through there, about an hour and a half, depending on traffic.
Right?
So it's not really far. So I grew up, I was lucky enough to have a father that took me fishing when I was a kid. My dad, Wayne, was great. He grew up in the South in Roland, North Carolina. If you've ever driven down I-95 and you've seen south of the border, which is a big complex on the North Carolina, South Carolina border, Roland's right around there. So he grew up there, and he had 14 brothers and sisters. He was 13.
Really?
He was one of, yeah. And I have a nice amount of uncles as well. So when my dad grew up, they would
Have
fish.
you met them all?
They've all passed. They've all passed at this point, except for my uncle Steve. He was youngest. My dad was the second youngest. Yes, I've met all of them.
Yeah. How about all your cousins?
Yeah, right.
Send them all birthday cards,
No way.
right?
No way. Facebook has been tremendous in connecting, I will say.
You got your own page for your family?
There is a Walters there. They've done reunion. There's a Walters family Bible that one of my, before ancestry.com, one of my cousins actually was way into it. But yes, we went way into it. But anyway, so my uncles and my dad fished a lot growing up. And a few of my uncles actually were really good and fished a lot and were in bass tournaments, BASS, back in the day with like Hank Parker and those dudes. When Hank and those guys were young, back in those tournaments in the South, I don't think it was quite what, I don't know if they were Johnny Morris ones or who was running them at that time, but there was regional tournament. Anyway, they collected paychecks. But when my dad came up north and became a Yankee, because we are the only ones above the Mason-Dixon line, which we are reminded of. But we love them we love them just the same. He always took me fishing. It was either going pond fishing, going fishing at creeks, going down to the beach and going out and catching flounders and stuff. And I always loved it. I always just liked being outside, and I really enjoyed the fishing aspect of it. And I guess it was kind of in my blood. And as I got older, I started fishing more on my own, riding my bike in the summer to go fish ponds. Then I got my driver's license, and then it was all over. Started driving to the beach and fishing. And then I met some guys that were down there, and I got my first fly rod. I forget what it was, a St. Croix, and it was a 9-weight. And I got it at some shop down there. And it was, man, I think it was an Imperial, and it had like a plastic click paw reel on it. It was
fiberglass, probably.
Yeah. No. It was graphite. It was
really?
I think it was Imperial. Yeah.
All right.
So this was like 96, 97. And I watched Jose Wijebi, right? He used to have the fly fishing show on ESPN on like Saturday mornings. Anyway, I watched him, and I was like, I could do that too. So I'll go down to the Indian River Inlet, which has this beautiful jetty. And there's stripers, there's bluefish, even in the summer. There's schoolies, snapper blues, which are the small ones that we call. So I would go out there and just whale chartreuse and white clousers, more in the back of my head than actually in the water. But that's when I started, like right at the end of high school, getting into it. And I'd always spin fished for him, and I was successful with that, and I loved it. So I thought it was really great. And it's always great with clients as well, is if you have a background in fishing in general, before you pick up a fly rod, it helps a lot. So I started there doing that. And then after high school, I went to the University of Delaware, studied wildlife biology and entomology there. And I was a naturalist at a state park. Shout out to White Clay Creek State Park, right outside of University of Delaware in Newark. And it's one of, I think at the time, I don't even know how many there are now, 2 or 3 trout streams in the state of Delaware. And they're just stocked.
I had no idea.
They flow out of Pennsylvania, like Lancaster area. So as a naturalist at the state park, it was trout stocking. And I grew up throwing rooster tails and drifting power bait to catch trout there. But I was a naturalist. I would go out and collect insect samples for student classrooms for macroinvertebrates. When I would be out there, I would collect these samples, and these dudes would be standing in the stream and they were fly fishing. And like, I just always was like, all right, it's cool doing this in the salt water, but like these Orbis dudes, like that have like little wicker baskets on them, like I don't want to be one of those guys. I'll just go rip the clouds around.
Khaki pants. Yeah.
So one day, Ed O'Donnell, I remember the guy's name because he actually taught me how to trout fish. He called me over after I collected the sample, and he's like, "What'd you collect?" And I'll never forget. It was an olive caddis larva, and I walked over to him, and he opened his box up, and I'd never even seen nymphs or anything like that before. Puts a olive pupa on, ties it on, throws it out there in the riffle, and his first drift, he mashes like an 18-inch rig.
Really?
And I looked at him, I said, well, I can do that.
That light bulb went on. And
So that is the start of it. And then ironically studying entomology at University of Delaware, it kind of just all came together, and I graduated, moved out to Western Pennsylvania, and I started working in nonprofits there. One nonprofit I think I mentioned before was Venture Outdoors, and they do recreational programs within Western Pennsylvania, outdoor recreation. Nice. And they had two instructors, Dale and Cindy Katowski, and they taught the fly fishing intro 101 class. And I met Dale. I was the program assistant at the time, but I met him through organizing the trips and stuff. And I was like, hey, where are you doing all this trout fishing and stuff? And he's like, oh, I'll take you up. He brought me up to the Yawk. I went fishing with him a few times, and his wife, Cindy. And then that was Meadow Run and a couple of the brook trout fisheries that we have here. And then I'd never been to Ohio Pile, and I fell in love with it and the Yawk River. And so for the next 2 years, this is 2005, next 2 years, every waking minute I was up here fishing the Middle Yawk River. And then, in 2007, through Dale, I met one of the outfitters and became friendly with them. And they asked if I was interested in guiding. So I guided for them. Wilderness Voyagers is the company, for say like maybe 9-10 years, something like that. And then I met Jim and Ernie while I was guiding out on the river, and they had a separate business, Laurel Highlands Guide Services, who I'm now with. And Jim offered for me to guide for them, and I needed to get a boat because with Wilderness Voyagers, you use their boat. I needed to get a boat, so I got a boat. I borrowed theirs a few times and figured out what I wanted, and then I started guiding full time, like 2016, 17-ish, right around there.
What was it about guide? I mean, I know you love fishing and you got to make an income, but what was it about guiding back then that got you interested? And what is it now about guiding that keeps you in the game here?
It's the discovery of this place, this area. It's the river. It's the history of we talked on it, and we probably talked to it on, and I'll always harp on it, but I studied wildlife biology and entomology. I'm very much into the environment. I'm very much into conservation, and I'm very much into not only leaving a place better than I found it, but if I have an opportunity to make it better, and show it off to people so that they care about it too. And I get to float down the river in an awesome boat with my dog and teach people how to fish, or people that already know how to fish, catch fish. It just all clicked. And then it was like COVID hit, and the business exploded. Absolutely exploded.
No kidding.
Yeah, because I was kind of in between. I was down on the lower Yawk bass fishing and stuff a lot, and then up here, and then I lived in both places, and then that's when I moved up here full time, and it's when I took over and became a partner, and
good for you,
kept it going. So yeah, so it's been blowing up, and it's been a very as my parents would say, interesting path.
All right, so let me ask you this: if you were, I don't know if your high school had voted for people the most something or another, like if your high school voted that you would win an award, like what would your award be, do you think?
Oh my God. I have no idea. I went to a really big high school, and I was a jock.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Yeah, I was a big football and baseball. I was pretty darn good at baseball. All
Awesome.
state. Yeah. Well, for the state of Delaware, I got on a travel team and went to like Texas, Oklahoma junior Olympic tournament. And I saw kids like my age. I was like, I'm not going to be a professional baseball player. This is ridiculous. I better study. So man, you know what? I don't know if there's a word for it. Maybe more like kind of like a glue. Like I had, high school is real cliquey, and you have,
Yeah.
especially in a large Catholic high school that I went to. But I had friends in all different kinds of groups, and I even had really good friends that went to other high schools, and because Delaware is pretty small, really small. And just trying to connect people and getting people together. So
You're a connector.
yeah,
That's a
the
type of
connector.
person.
That would probably be it.
Yeah, that is a type of person.
I really enjoyed meeting and learning from a lot of different people. And that's part of why I love guiding. I absolutely love all of the stories that I get to hear on trips. It's just,
Are you kind of a psychologist now because you got to listen to all your clients talk about their wives and their
I can
families
tell
and their
you one
jobs?
thing. I know when I need to keep asking questions, and I know when to stop asking questions.
Okay.
I have a pretty good
true.
idea of what path that conversation might go down.
It's kind of like being married, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
I don't know if you're married, but
well,
it's kind
as a divorced guide, yeah, I can.
okay, all right. Didn't mean to pick that scab.
That's actually one of the funniest stories. That's a quick one. We don't have to leave on, but I had a client, never met him before, gets in my boat, and he goes, "I have a question to ask you." And I said, "Sure, what's up?" He goes, "How many times have you been divorced?" And I said, "It's kind of personal." And
Yeah.
he's like,
So I have to tell
well, once, unfortunately. And he was like, "Okay, good." He's like, "I've never been in a boat with a guide that wasn't divorced that was any good."
you. Okay.
I was
Yeah,
like, that's your standard. All right. Well, that's
you
good.
must be going with guides who are like in their 40s and 50s then, 'cause,
Yeah.
like, there's a lot of guys out there in their 20s. I don't even know if they're married yet. So,
Oh,
all right, a couple more quick questions.
yeah.
What's your favorite shore lunch? What are you cooking up for people? What are you bringing for food?
So our insurance does not allow us to provide lunch.
Really?
Personally, I can't make something and bring something.
Oh, you can't? Huh. Well, you might poison them or what?
I think from a legality standpoint, yeah, like if I use bad lunch meat or something and they get sick, the insurance companies no.
Okay, so you
But it actually works out really well. And continuing the conversation about everyone relying on each other and this being a community that's reliant on tourism. We utilize two local establishments, Mitch's and Confluence. They provide lunches. And also the bakery, Ohio Pile Bakery.
So you tell your clients to go to Mitch's and pick up a lunch?
No, we go get it. Like I'll go pick it up and everything.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah. I bring it on the
boat. You
boat.
can't make it. Okay.
I have to order. It has to be in a certified food kitchen kind of thing.
Well, okay. What kind of sandwiches are you getting?
So we're Mitch's, like their Italian subs are out of this world. She does everything individually, the sandwich itself, but all of the veggies and the dressings and everything are all Pam is her name, individually wrapped, and they do amazing rolls. Potato salad, all kinds of like really good stuff, bags of chips, things like that. Real easy, because the one thing you have to remember is 9 miles is a lot to cover in an 8 to 10 hour period. So we are constantly moving. And if we get stuck on a pot of fish that are rising, we could be there for 2 hours. Oh. So we might not, if you got to take care of business, we'll get to the shore, but sometimes we just make it right there, right on the boat. I'm like, hey, you guys, we just caught 15 fish in this pod. We are an hour and a half behind, 2 hours behind. If I can push for 20 minutes, we're going to make up that time, and there's going to be fish down there.
That's
we're going to
like
miss some good water, but we're going to keep it moving. So there, and then the bakery in Ohio Pile, his name's Rob as well. He does these fresh ciabatta breads that he makes in the bakery, and like lunch meats, and he does a veggie sandwich that will blow your mind if you're a veggie. We can also cater to vegans as well. We can get salads provided. But Rob at Ohio Pile Bakery, he is famous for them. And if you're there, even if you don't fish with us, stop in and get a blueberry muffin from Rob and Ohio Pile Bakery. It is the best blueberry muffin you'll ever have in your life.
There you go.
And it's the number one requested thing we get for returning clients.
I just had something called a debris sandwich. My buddy and I, we went to this place, and we're in my little town, Joe's butcher shop, and he's like, we're getting debris sandwiches. Like, what the heck is this? It's all the meat and the drippings where they're cooking tenderloins and things like this. All the stuff that falls in the bottom of the pan. They scoop all that up,
Yeah.
And then they put it on sandwiches. A debris. It was so good.
Oh, debris.
Debris. Yeah.
I thought you were saying brie, like a cheese.
debris. No, debris. Like, oh,
Okay.
junk. That was okay. So what about your favorite place or places at the end of the day for a hungry, thirsty angler to get a bite to eat and something to drink?
Two places in Ohio Pile. There is Fall City Pub, good spot.
All right.
I'll give a plug to my previous employer. It's a good place. But my favorite personal place on the entire mountain is Lucky Dog Cafe in Confluence, owned by a local couple, Eric and Andy. Unbelievable menu, super fresh food, salads, tacos, sandwiches, you name it, burgers. Their burger, oh, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
They're awesome. So those are my two places. Both places have really nice selection of adult beverages as well, which sometimes help after a float trip. Nice beer sometimes helps. So
yeah, you bet.
Those two, but definitely recommend them. They're great places.
Good shout out. Rob, thanks for being on the show. You're awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah. How can people get in touch with you?
Two ways. You can get us online, Laurel Highlands Guide Services. I know it's long. If you Google that, you can also find us on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, or you can just give us a call at 412-715-8461. That'll put you in direct contact with me. And if you have questions, want to book a trip, anything you need to know, places to stay, places to eat, way to have a fun time for a week in Western Pennsylvania. We look forward to having you out.
Rob's your man. Give him a call. Rob, thanks again for being on the show. I wish you extraordinary success in all your adventures to follow. And folks, thank you for listening. Be sure to post Rob's contact information on the Destination Angler show notes and pictures of all those fly patterns he was talking about. And it sounds like he sent me a bunch of really beautiful shots too. So look for those on Facebook and Instagram. You can DM me and email me with comments and suggestions at shaig50@gmail.com. If you like the show, please share it with a buddy. And we will put this show out on YouTube as well. If you're listening on the podcast, you can watch us do this show on YouTube. And we might have faces for podcasting, Rob. I don't know. Maybe not you. But
hi, Mom. I'll just say hi, Mom.
My mom would like it.
Trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
As always, our music is by our brothers Found. These are buddies of mine. They live in Fort Collins, Colorado, and they're doing really well out there. We're going to do a little snippet with these guys on my other podcast, the Destination Angler Adventures podcast. I interviewed those. They're fun guys. Hope you join the show. We'll see you again soon. Tight lines, everybody.